is Susan Kilby. I'm the Heritage Education Officer for Charnwood Forest, and today we're going to do something really exciting. We're going to make some medieval ink from oak galls found right here in Charnwood Forest. So some of you may be thinking, what on earth is oak gall ink? Well, it was a very beautiful black ink that was made in the Middle Ages to be written onto parchment, and the reason that it was so useful was because it was extremely durable. So you could write on the parchment and know that it wasn't going to fade, that it wasn't going to rub off. It's quite an astonishing process. So most of you may well be asking yourselves, what on earth is an oak gall? And I've got a couple of examples here to show you so that you can have a look. And this one here that you can see is a knopper oak gall. And if you can see, this husk has been created around the acorn. You can probably see where my finger is, the cup, the acorn cup that this has been created around. And this is essentially a parasitic wasp that is creating a home for its larvae, and they leave towards the end of the summer. So if you look really carefully, you can see how absolutely beautiful this is. This is actually quite a modern gall. This particular wasp was introduced into our country in the 20th century. If we want to be really authentic, this is the gall for us. This is a marble gall, and you can see it's completely different from the knopper gall that we just looked at. It's formed around the bud instead of the acorn like the knopper gall, and this particular gall in fact was found right here in the outwards, and you want to be looking for these sometime around September time. Now if you look carefully at this, you can see that there's a hole in it. That's quite exciting because that is the wasp's exit hole, and that's how we know that the wasp has tunnelled its way out and gone on about its business. It's a beautiful, beautiful little gall. So we're going to begin the process of making our ink, and we're going to make two sets of ink today, and we're going to follow two completely different processes. They're both really easy, which is the great news, and the first process that we're going to follow doesn't require us to use any heat at all. So I'm just going to take you through the equipment that I've got on the table here. I've got my weighing scales. I've got a clean, sterilised jar. That's going to be where we'll put our steeping galls when we finish the process. I've got a clear plastic bag here, some rainwater in a jar that I brought with me. I've got a hammer, which I'm going to use to break up our galls in a minute, you'll see. Now you could use anything for this really. You might want to use a rolling pin, or perhaps a pestle and mortar. I think that would be really authentic if we're thinking about making something medieval, but this is going to do for me for today. So you use whatever you've got. I've got a wooden spoon, I've got a Pyrex jar here, and fundamentally I've got my beautiful oak galls here as well. So what we're going to do is we'll begin by weighing out our galls, and what we need to remember is that for every 10 grams of galls we're going to use 100 mils of rainwater. So I'm just going to measure these out, and I want about 50 grams here, and that's absolutely perfect. So you can see, and you've already seen me explaining the makeup of these galls. What you'll need to do before we bash them up is to just peel them away from the acorn husk, as you can see me doing now. So I'm going to get on with that. And then in a minute we'll start bashing these up. Right then, so this is part of the fun part of the process. I'm going to get my hammer. I've got my knopper galls all bagged up and ready, and I'm just basically going to start bashing these. So do be careful, do mind your fingers if you're a little bit clumsy like me, but essentially we just want to give them a good whack. need these to be particularly powdery. We just want to break them up a little bit. So I'm using this clear plastic bag, but there's no reason that you need to use a bag like this. You can use whatever you've got at home actually. That might be an old carrier bag, or perhaps even something like an old pillowcase. Whatever you've got that's going to keep these galls contained while you're giving them a bit of a whack. Now I'm happy with the consistency that I've got here. It's not, you know, they're not completely broken down, but I've managed to get a nice sort of crumbly texture, and I hope you can see that on my hand there. That's the sort of texture that will work for you to make this ink. So that's really what we're looking to get to. Okay, so we're now up to an exciting part, because we're going to mix our smashed up galls with some of this rainwater. So I'm going to take my jar and get it on the scales, and I'm just going to tip my galls into the jar. Just try and make sure that I'm not going to spill any of that. And I've now got, that's brought me down to 30 grams on my scales. So I want about 300 mils of water. I'm going to just pour some of this into the jug just to make it a little bit easier, and then I'm going to weigh that, and I just need a little bit more actually. So again, these are very good activities to get the children in the classroom involved in a little bit of weighing and measuring. So there we go, that's up to 300. I'm going to put the lid on, and you can give it a stir with the spoon if you like, but just give it a good mix like that. And then what we're going to do with that is we're going to leave that to steep in a warm place. So for me, that's going to be somewhere near my boiler. You could perhaps find a nice warm spot in the classroom, and we're going to leave it for around about 10 days, and then we'll come back to it and we'll show you what to do next. What we're going to do now is we're going to make a second batch that you're actually going to see turn into an ink today in about sort of 15 or 20 minutes, and it's an ink that you'll be able to cook up literally and then use on the same day. So we've got our bashed up galls, we're all ready to go, and before we do that, let me just take you through the equipment that you need for this speedy oak gall ink recipe. You need a source of heat, so I'm using this little camping stove that we've got going here, and if you want to do this outside, if you're doing it at home and you want this sort of outdoor camping vibe, this is the sort of thing to go for, but you could do it in your kitchen, I guess, if you wanted to. Or very authentically over an open fire. That would be amazing to do that. I've got a saucepan, we're going to use that in a minute. I've got my oak galls here. I've got my water, the rainwater that I've already measured out. I have got some vinyl gloves, because when we get to the final stage of this process, we're going to squeeze the oak gall husks, and we don't really want to get that on our hands, so do wear gloves for that part of the process. I've got a wooden spoon, I've got my clean sterilised jar in which we're going to put the ink at the end. I've got a funnel here that we'll strain it all off with, and then you'll need something to help that straining process. I've got a muslin cloth. You could use a clean tea towel, you could use perhaps a paper coffee filter, something like that would work really, really well just to strain those off at the end. And then I've got two magic ingredients, some nice scientific ingredients that are going to help us in a little while to finish off our ink. I've got some gum arabic. You can buy this on the internet. This is in powdered form. Again, I've already weighed that out. And this is going to help to thicken the ink very, very slightly when we get to that stage. And then I've got some ferrous sulfate, some iron sulfate here, and you can see it's this beautiful green crystalline material here. Now we need to be a little bit careful with this, especially if you're doing this with children today. We don't want to get this anywhere near faces, and we certainly don't want that being swallowed. So it's perfectly safe to use as long as you're being careful. And again, perhaps if you're doing this with children, you might want to get them to wear gloves and to wash their hands thoroughly afterwards, after they've finished this process. So let's get cracking, and I'm going to tip the oak galls into my pan. I've got 50 grams here of crushed oak gall, so they're going into the saucepan. I can get rid of that bag. And then I've got my rainwater, so I'm going to get the pan on the stove, and we're going to mix that rainwater in there. So that's 500 mils of rainwater have gone in. And what we need to do now is really to, we can give it a bit of a stir, but we need to get this boiling, and it's as if you're making a nice sauce. So for those of you who have got experience of working in the kitchen, made a nice reduction sauce, you want to get this boiling and reduce that water down. And already we can see this is turning a beautiful brown. So come and have a look, it's absolutely gorgeous. So this has been going for about 15 minutes. You can see that it's darkened up really nicely. It's just at the right stage now for us to think about adding some of our magic ingredients. So our first ingredient is the gum arabic, and if you remember, I've already weighed that out. So I'm going to tip this directly into the pan, and this is going to thicken. So what I want to do is give that a really nice stir now. We want to get that to dissolve. And this is going to give our ink a little bit of consistency. We don't want it to be too runny, so just want to really stir that up. So let's just remind ourselves what we've got here. We've got 50 grams of oak galls, and into that we've added 500 mils of rainwater. And then we've added our gum arabic, and so for every 10 grams of galls we need 5 grams of both of our ingredients here, the ferrous sulfate, which we're going to add soon, and the gum arabic that I've already added. So that's 25 grams of gum arabic. So we're ready now to strain all of this off, and before I do that I'm going to put these gloves on, and I do suggest that you wear some gloves at this point, because we're going to want to squeeze every last drop out of this solution. So I've got a jug here, and I'm going to put my funnel in, and I've got my cloth or whatever it is that you're using to strain off these galls. So in they go. Let's do it that way so you can see that lovely dark liquid all going through. Just make sure I've got all of it there, that's it, out of the pan, like that. And we'll set that to one side, and we can see that we've got this beautiful brown. It's a really deep brown, absolutely gorgeous, and I'm going to give that a bit of a squeeze. What you might want to do when you're doing this is don't do this immediately after you've turned the heat source off, because obviously it's going to be very hot. We left it for a good sort of 10 minutes or so. You don't want to be scalding yourself when you're doing this, but that's really squeezed that through, so I'm going to just get rid of that and remove that funnel. So this is the really exciting bit. Come and see what happens now when we add this ferrous sulfate into this lovely solution. So I'm just going to tip that in and stir it, and I hope you can see that that has gone from brown to a beautiful dark black. Absolutely gorgeous. And it really is that simple. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to put it into this little jar. So just pour it in. Oh, it's absolutely beautiful. I'm absolutely thrilled with that. It's just stunning. So let's get rid of that jug, and I'm going to put this lid on. We do really want to make sure that we're not going to spill it anywhere, because it is extremely durable, as I've said, and it will stain, so do be careful not to spill it. And now it's ready for you to do some writing or some drawing, whatever takes your fancy, with your own Charnwood Forest ink. So here we are with our 2 jars. We've got this one that we made first of all, which is our slow process Charnwood Forest Oak Gall ink, and this is going to be steeping for about 2 weeks in a warm place. And to finish that off, you're essentially going to go through a very, very similar process to the one that you've just seen in the making of this speedy ink. You don't need the heat source. All we need to do is strain it off in just the way that you saw me doing earlier, and then we'll add both of those sets of ingredients. So we'll add the gum arabic and we'll add the ferrous sulfate, and that will make you a beautiful Charnwood ink that will look something like this. But this is our speedy ink. It's absolutely beautiful. I'm absolutely thrilled with it, and this is ready to use now. So we're ready to start writing. This is the really exciting bit. Now, because we're in the outwards, we've sharpened a little stick into a nice flat nib. You can perhaps use something a bit more modern if you like an old fountain pen, or perhaps a dipping pen if you're into calligraphy. But if you wanted to do something like this, it's really very simple, or you could perhaps use a feather, something nice and authentic like that. So let's see what happens when we dip our ink. And I'm going to do some writing, but you could do some drawing if you prefer. And this is absolutely gorgeous, as I hope you can see. My calligraphy skills aren't really up to much, but I'm sure you can do far better than I can. But you can see it's just going down really beautifully. So if you wanted to use that for writing or painting, it's just absolutely stunning. And we just need to leave that and let that dry for a bit. But I hope you have lots of fun making your ink and then using it to write or to draw with. Enjoy.